Presentations then. I'd like to Simon Conron, who's a scientist with the Victorian Fisheries Authority, and Paul, you as well, or is it? So they're sharing the stage.
Thanks, Greg. My name's Simon Conron. I'm part of a science team. Collecting information to evaluate the status of fish stocks for Dusky Flathead. Yeah. Yep, just waiting for it. Is that? I've been mic'd up because I do have a quiet voice, so I've got it covered. So just waiting for a presentation. So as Kate was saying, that the management was in place, and what's important to know whether we can provide the evidence to see whether all the work that we've done is working. And thank you. So I'll just get this going. Right. Yeah. So as part of the science team, our goal is to review what the status of Dusky Flathead stocks are, and the things that were important for us to answer the questions for management is basically look at the trend in abundance of Dusky Flathead stock. We're also interested in the size composition, and as what we've heard earlier with Paul and Wayne, that really important, what's happening with the juveniles? Are we getting regular juveniles coming through the system? And what's happening with the large fish? We've put in place regulations that are meant to protect these large fish to breed. So we want to know whether that's working. So, but also an important part of that is actually the perceptions of anglers. You guys are out there fishing for them. Are what we're seeing in our measuring and monitoring, does that reflect the status? So we want to know that. So basically, and for today, our water body areas that we're really interested in are Lake Tyers, Malakuta and the Gippsland Lakes. So as far as, what are our measures? Our indicators are catch rates. Catch rates for recreational fishing is basically your catch might be numbers per hour fishing for your effort, so that's a catch rate. For commercial fishing, again, it's their catch, which might be weight, because they weigh their catch, for their effort, which in the case that we're interested in is a net effort, so the shot of a mesh net. The other area is about size composition. We're looking at measuring, and for us, we have anglers out. You've heard a bit about Anglodorus, and a lot of you in the room, there's a fair few Doris measure the fish. So we've got size composition data for Lake Tyers and Malakuta. And the time period. Now, the good thing about Angler Diary program is that we've been running it for almost 20 years. So we're really set up to have a good look at these cycles over an extended period of time. And that's due a lot to the efforts of anglers that are interested in these questions as well and can look after and tell us that. So, and the other part of it is the local knowledge survey. And a lot of you have been involved in an online survey that provides the local knowledge. So I'll just get Sorry. Okay, so as far as an Angler Diary program, sorry, that wasn't me. Yeah, as far as an Angler Diary program, what the sort of information we're collecting is target species, gear, size, composition, and time spent fishing. I mentioned that, and fish length. But there's a lot of anglers out here that go a lot more than that are interested in these in this information. And research anglers actually fish a full size range of fish for us, and they use specific gear that get a full size range, juveniles up to adults, and also they provide ageing information, which is collecting of otoliths. And this program has been awarded nationally. It's a citizen science program. It's about anglers getting engaged in providing the information. And in East Gippsland, we've had 145 anglers that have been involved in the program. But we've also had about 80 anglers that have been involved specifically in Dusky Flathead. In East Gippsland, it's mainly black brim anglers that they're involved in fishing for black brim, but you also fish for other species. And over that time, over the 20 years, you've done 7,000 fishing trips, so it's a lot of data. And basically, those trips, or just under 2,000 have been for Dusky Flathead trips. Caught a lot of fish, about 12,000, and they basically and measured 9,000. So we have a lot of data to deal with, and we're grateful for that, of people being involved. We've got plans to expand the program even more. Later in the year, we're looking to get an electronic diary program. That'll involve basically using your phone or an app to record the data. It gives us an opportunity to give feedback as well. So we are still going to continue the paper program. A lot of you that are involved in doing that. But by getting it electronic, we can really reach out right across Victoria and provide a lot more information. So we hope that you'll get involved. Okay, back to the data. As I mentioned, we've got thousands of fish being measured, and in Lake Tyes and Malakuta Inlet, you can see from this graph at the top, Lake Tyes is most of the catch is in the slot limit, but we do have information below 30 and above 55. And for Malakuta Inlet again, most of the catch is in the slot limit, but it gives us a look at those smaller fish below the 30 and above the 55. And but we also have ageing, and I mentioned about the research angler program, that we've got anglers and they're in the room, and I'd just like to acknowledge Glenda and John, who've done a lot of these collections of otoliths, as Paul mentioned, ear bones, that in Lake Tyes and Malakuta. So they go out there, catch the fish. For some of the undersized, they have a fishing permit to do that. It's quite rigorous. They've got targets that they collect, and they remove these ear bones for us to age. And from that information, we can say in the slot limit, as Paul alluded, that most of those fish are between 2 and 5 years old. And you can see we got some above and some below. And that's been the backbone of the information that you've seen earlier. So all these questions that we had 10 years ago of what's going on, a lot of these answers have been, you guys in the room have collected the information. It's a great way to have it working. So what's the trend in abundance, the catch rates? When we look at those catch rates over time, and at the top we've got Malakuta, Lake Tyes, starting at 1999 when the program got going, and then finishing through to 2011. As you can see that just by glancing at these graphs as the catch rate goes up and down, there's a lot of similarities in the trend we're seeing across the whole system. So angler diary data up the top, netting data down the bottom in Gippsland, and you can see that what strikes out that we can see that the first time around 2005 we started to see that increase in catch rates in the diary angler program in Malakuta and Lake Tyes. The next sort of pulse of fish that came through was right through all the three systems. And then another pulse of fish that we saw particularly in Lake Tyes and in Gippsland Lakes, and not so much in Malakuta. And then after that, we've seen a gradual decline in catch rates. So this is fish above all sizes, so below in the slot limit and above, but you've seen from the data it's mainly the slot limit, so it's consistent with it.
So what year is that red line at?
This one? Yeah. So you can see 12. So right when the actual regulations came in. So that was 2007. And prior to that was around about 2004. So we've seen 4 good pulses of fish coming through. If we sort of have a look at just fish under the slot limit, so these are quite small fish between 15 and 30. So these are anglers who, a lot of you are lure fishers, and but we've got in the program, if you know, we've got brim fishers. So they're actually fishing with bait, and a group of those are research anglers. And they might afterwards lament the fact that they talk to me and I say, well, can you use the number 4s? And by the way, can you have a go with a number 6 bait holder? And, that's, not a comfortable thing for a lot of anglers to go out and catch the smallest fish that they can catch. But it really gave us an insight when they used the smaller hooks and soft baits to what was going on. And so what you can see in these graphlets, for example, Malakuta, you can see we're seeing these pulses of catch rates of smaller fish in 2004, 2006, and then again 2012. And the next year you would see that coming into the fisheries. So what we're seeing is periodic pulses of fish coming through. And what we've been hearing from Paul and also Wayne is, as far as a natural system, it's quite understandable. You'd expect that. And in Lake Tyers, again, a similar pulse of smaller fish, and then in 2010. And the Gippsland Lakes, we haven't had a really active Dusky Flathead angler diary program going, but we did have bream, and you can see bream fishing. So you see in 2005, another pulse of fish coming through. So these are the small fish in their first year of life. As I mentioned before, the other thing we can do with diary anglers is get them to target larger fish. And this graph, and we're really fortunate in Lake Tyers that we've got an angler, and Bob's here today, that he religiously goes out and fishes, I don't know, Bob, probably 2 or 3 days a week for the larger flathead. The way he fishes in live bait, so it's a great way to fish for larger flathead. And so that was fortunate in the fact that basically once the slot limit came in, we've seen in the proportion of catches of diary anglers an increase. So that again is evidence to show us that important group of fish is being maintained for when the conditions are right for spawning. In the case of Malakuta, we haven't seen the same sort of information coming through from the Angler Diary program. We've got a question mark over it, but our Malakuta diary fishes are mainly bream fishes, using more the gear that's suited to bream. So it's an area that we'd really like to explore further, but we're really happy with the results we're getting for Lake Tyers. So that's a snapshot of where we're at with the Angler Diary program and the evidence for that. And I'm going to hand over to Paul to talk about the other important part of it is the local knowledge, and we've had a survey from results from that. So thanks.
Thanks, Simon. So yeah, look, we have, as you saw, a lot of diary angler stuff, etc. And because the anglers do different things with targeting, etc., we want to have as many lines of evidence as we can around the status of these fisheries, so that when we do advise managers on what we think is going on, we're pretty confident we've got it right. And so, as Simon said, local knowledge is really important to the story for us. So we love talking to fishers and finding out what they think's going on, but there are thousands of fishers out there and we can't go and talk to all of them. So online surveys are something that fisheries agencies are starting to use a lot more to give people an opportunity to have some input. And I think you're going to see these being used a bit more by us as well, particularly for smaller areas where we don't get to too often. So we're trialling this with this Dusky Flathead Recreational Licence project. So far, a few people of you have probably done this, I imagine. Hopefully all of you have done it. If you haven't done it, go back to the website and do it when you go home. I'd like to get it up to sort of 300 or 400 if I can, but so far we've had 180 respondents, which is pretty good for the few weeks it's been going. And it asks a lot of questions, not only about who you are and try and profile you as a fisherman, but what you think about the status of the fishery that you're most familiar with. And I'm just going to present an overview of the results that relate to the satisfaction aspects to finish off this talk. So this is overall, so this is across all water bodies, an overall picture, say, for East Gippsland, Dusky Flathead, what the general sort of feeling is of satisfaction with the quality of Dusky Flathead fishing. 60% of people were in the satisfied spectrum, so that's either very satisfied or quite satisfied in the survey. Around about 35 were not satisfied or not satisfied at all, not too happy, and a few didn't really know. So there's always a few people that don't have enough fishing experience to make an educated appraisal, and that's why we have unsure category. So overall 60, it's not 80 or 90 or 100, but it's not too bad given other surveys we've done in relation to overall satisfaction. But to really get an understanding of where these values are coming from, we have to drill down into each of the water bodies because, as I said before, they're their own sort of stocks and populations and they have their own different impacts. So let's have a look at them now. This is a question that relates to how satisfied people are over the last year with their catches of fish in the slot limit, 30 to 55 centimetres, so your run-of-the-mill good eating size. And Malakuta here and Lake Tyers, the general picture is of positivity and pretty good satisfaction levels with those mid-range slot limit size fish. Not too much differences going on here. Gippsland Lakes, it's a bit different, and there's a lot of issues with Gippsland Lakes of other things going on, but overall it was a 50-50 split in satisfaction, so not heavily biased either way for the slot limit size. For the larger fish, and here we start to see some consistencies in the other data, which is good for us. It gives us more confidence that what we've been measuring is more reflective of reality. In Malakuta, when it comes to these larger fish, we're slightly more biased towards people who are less satisfied than satisfied with the abundance of big fish. So although we had some uncertainty in interpreting the data from the dire anglers because of their fishing methods, this does tend to support that there is perhaps a lower number of larger fish in Malakuta at the moment. This is only for the last 12 months, bear in mind. In Lake Tyers, consistent with the graph that Simon showed you, very high level of satisfaction with the large fish component of the fishery there. And in Gippsland Lakes, sort of kind of similar to the slot limit fish. 55 or so people on the not satisfied spectrum compared to 40% on the satisfied. Most of the respondents have an opinion, which is good. They sort of do have enough experience to make a judgment. In terms of the trend, so this is looking back, this is asking people to think back over your experience of the fishery where you mostly fish. What do you think the trend's been like over the recent time? And so it's picking up on those catch rate graphs that Simon showed first. And we can see that these two here are kind of like, you know, we're pretty happy if it's stable, variable, improving, so you can kind of add these two together. If we look at the green lines, which is deteriorating, 30% in Malakuta Inlet thought it was deteriorating, so the majority of people are thinking it's either stable or variable, which is what we kind of see a lot with these fisheries, or improving. In Lake Tyers, 20% thought it was deteriorating, so 80% of people thought it was stable or improving. And when we go to Gippsland Lakes, 40% around about thought it was deteriorating, but the majority still were saying it was stable or variable, but not quite to the extent as for the other two systems. Overall, so this is that same sort of overall satisfaction question, but for each estuary. And overall, the majority in each estuary are on the satisfied spectrum compared to the unsatisfied, although a little bit more unsatisfied in Malakuta now. These are preliminary, so we're going to keep this survey going for a bit longer. We want to get the numbers up a bit more. So when we publish the report, you might see some differences in these graphs as we get more people filling out the survey. There was an option to provide comments. Most people don't provide comments in these surveys, they just do the multiple choices. But probably, 20% or so people write something in, and I've just tried to capture the main themes in the comments for each of these estuarine dusky fisheries. We'll start with Malakuta. There was comments around less larger fish, consistent with the other information. There was a bit of concern about the habitats in Malakuta. particularly comments around seagrass and not have been down there. I'd be interested to know later on in the Q&A if someone from Malakuta wants to talk about this issue, what they've seen with seagrass. It'd be really important to hear about that. There were suggestions to think about even increasing the minimum length. So there's obviously people thinking about the regulations and whether there's, tweaking that could be done on those. There was concerns around multi-tripping, people coming in and out, and maybe that sort of issue, increasing the fishing pressure and just general more people fishing. Possession limits was one that came up. I don't know the compliance officers. There is no possession limit for Dusky Flathead at the moment. If you check someone with an esky, sorry? Yeah. But not in the back of your trailer going home or something like that. Yeah. Anyway, that was one of the ones. But generally, pretty positive about the slot limit down that way. In lake tyres, evidence of good numbers of large fish, it's all positive. Good feedback around the slot limit. A couple of guys said it's been a bit poorer recently. The fishing's dropped away a little bit. Talks about this need to open the entrance, and that's something that we could spend a whole workshop on, I reckon. But some people obviously still think that manual opening, in terms of the biology of the system, can have an effect. There's other reasons why you might want to open it for infrastructure, etc. But this was more around in terms of it needs a good flush and these kind of arguments. So still a lot more to learn about that stuff. Same as Malakuta, perhaps legal size could go up a little bit, the minimum size. Concerns about, overfishing a bit and tighter controls on numbers, and wanting to see more people from fisheries down there at different times, checking people, counting their fish, doing surveys and things like that. Gippsland Lakes, just to finish off, current rec limits. Everyone seems pretty happy with them. We haven't had anything saying, no, it's slot limit's no good, or all this, we need to change it. It's all pretty positive around that. Bit of public awareness, this catch and release stuff, and what this comments relate to, I think, is about how to do it. Not so much that it's a bad thing, but how to do it properly to maximise the survival. Yeah, acknowledgement of the declines over the last decade, consistent with the data. Talks about water quality and pollution issues, so maybe there's some of that stuff related to the retardants and things that people have got in their head that maybe they think are affecting the fishing, and concerns over commercial fishing pressure as well were raised. So that's it for the main results of the survey. So yeah, when the report comes out, you'll be able to find it on our website or whatever, and get the latest when we get more through. So just to sum up, over both Simon's part of the talk and mine, we've had consistent catch rate decline since peaks in the mid to late 2000s across all systems, which is quite interesting given the different types of data we've used. Pretty consistent with the results of the surveys. The catch rates have actually stabilised, and in fact in some areas showing signs of a bit of an increase at 20 to 50% of those peak periods. So it's not like they're 0% or way down. So we think the prospects for them bouncing back are pretty good, naturally. The slot limit looks to be at least working pretty well in tyres, and with, we probably need to do a little bit more work measuring fish and evaluating down in Malakuta around that slot limit. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.